They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds. I'm not a schemer. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. And here we go.
Well, hello there, you amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. I hope you are all well on this stupendous Saturday. Why is it when you're trying to, on the spot, and my head just goes blank? I couldn't think of any words beginning with S. But anyway, you're looking absolutely amazing today. And I hope you have an amazing weekend as well. And in this video, which is video 1 of 2, that's it, 1 of 2, we're just going to be looking at an interview as the Gonsalves family continues to do their post-confession tour. Let's call it a post-confession tour, shall we? And look, I'm caught between a bit of a rock and a hard place because, as again, I've always said, you know, I feel for the Gonsalves family. You know, they've gone through this horrendous situation. But there's also been some frustration that Steve especially has been quite vocal throughout the situation. I've always felt that his vocalness, if that's even a word, could potentially lead to damaging of the potential to acquire justice in this trial. And there's also something else what's now starting to bug me. Because on the flip side of the coin, we have a situation where you've got to feel sorry for the family because of what's happened to them and have empathy for that and say, look, I wouldn't wish this situation upon anyone. And from a human perspective and a moral compass perspective, I feel that. Do you know what I mean? I understand that fully. But then, like I say, the flip side of the coin is that originally, prior to Brian Kohberger throwing the towel in, so to speak, which is, do you know what I mean? I'm in a quandary with Brian Kohberger. Do you know what I mean? And it is that I'm well aware that people can indeed admit to crimes they didn't commit, and you have to look at this and still have to agree, if you're not someone who just trusts everything, and think to yourself, look, I don't feel that Brian Kohberger was shown to have done this crime beyond a reasonable doubt, and I feel that it should have gone to court. And the families obviously wanted this to go to court because they wanted him to stand up in front of a jury and for the system to operate in the correct fashion, and that is to be shown all of the evidence and make a decision on the punishment. And this is a death penalty state at the end of the day. And I know not everybody agrees in the death penalty, but if ever there was a crime that warrants the death penalty, anyone who's pro-death penalty would absolutely agree that this crime ticks all the boxes. So look, on one hand, I'm aware that people will confess to crimes they didn't commit because they are leveraged or they just feel that, they don't want to die. They're scared of the death penalty. And Brian Kohberger has got things going on that would perhaps make him more susceptible to being convinced that this was perhaps a good idea, because the alternative could be much, much worse. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. Yes, there was an abundance of circumstantial evidence, but circumstantial evidence is not concrete evidence. And what we've seen in the court docs prior to this situation is that we've had specialists who have very virulently challenged some of the information that's out there, and it has been alluded to that there is even the potential for exculpatory evidence to exist that would perhaps benefit Brian Kohberger. But he's confessed. He's confessed. He's pled guilty, and pleading guilty without all of those other things attached to it that absolutely proves it, there's always going to be an element of doubt. And however small that element of doubt is, you want to try and eradicate it. And because it's that little bit of doubt that eats away at you. But I kind of digress there. The point being that Steve Gonsalves, up to that point, would make it sound like he knows everything. He knows that this guy is guilty. He knows all of the evidence that there is. He knows there's going to be much more coming out. He knows what happened. But then subsequently, kind of post-confession, if you like, or post-plea, Steve's now complaining that he hasn't been told anything. He doesn't know anything, even as far as it would seem that he doesn't even have access to the autopsy report. Now, look, we knew right way back when they were going through the courts that the autopsy report and the recording that was done seems to have vanished off the face of the planet because it was challenged at why certain people were actually in attendance at the autopsy when they weren't perhaps, how can I say, qualified to be there. And Ann Taylor challenged that. So this autopsy situation has always been a little bit of a bit of an odd one, considering that in a vast majority of cases you are given information. Even the public has access to exactly what injuries were sustained, as they can sometimes utilize that to show the public the brutality of exactly what has happened. But in this case, there's just this odd shroud of secrecy. They just seem to be hiding everything. But I just want to go through this interview here that that the Gonsalves family did with NBC News, that just again rams home just exactly what is being hidden in this case, and ask the question, why is this case being hidden so much? Why is so many elements of it being gagged? It's just not normal. And later on in video 2, I look at Judge Liz as she comes forward and says that there is elements to this that just aren't normal. But let's have a check. Let's check this out. Again, you know the rules, periodically pausing to offer commentary over the top for copyright reasons. We don't want to get struck down with furious anger.
Kaylee Gonsalves' parents, Steve and Christy, and their attorney, Shannon Gray. Thank you. Thank you both for being here this morning. Let me just start with both of you. I know it's been, thank you, 2.5 years now. It's long 2.5 years, the last few weeks especially. I would imagine have been fairly difficult. How are both of you holding up as we sit here right now?
Tired, exhausted. At this point.
It's been a long 2.5 years, isn't it? You know, you can tell that, it's taken its toll, especially on Steve. I will say that Steve just don't, this has really battered the shit out of the guy. And for all of the faults, we have to accept that he's been through the ringer. He put his trust in a system, and it would appear that he did that wrongfully.
Ready just to move on, just to get this past us.
Trying to catch up a little bit too. We expected to go to trial this summer, and I had 250 hours set aside, had my schedule, had things going. So it was a radical change for us. So now we're just trying to wrap our head around this new development, and we're still a family. You still got to take care of yourself, so we're moving on.
You've had a lot to wrap your head around for the past couple weeks, and sort of whiplash, if you will, to have Bryan Kohberger in court that day, admitting his guilt, admitting in open court everything he did.
Could you imagine that as well? Just you're ready for trial. You've been promised trial, the death penalty, and everything. Do you know what I mean? You are going towards this situation. You've lost your child. This person's been accused. You've been told that there's all this evidence. He's been told, look, trust us, leave us. We know what we're doing, and then to basically be bent over and done. Do you know what I mean? I would lose my shit.
That like, even if you weren't in the actual courtroom for it, what was that like to hear him actually say he's guilty?
It was very surreal. It was very emotional to hear it. Something that, I don't think that we were ever really prepared to hear or think that we would hear. So, yeah, it was hard. It was definitely hard. I wish that, he would have had to say, maybe their names other than just simple yeses and nos. But
why?
That picture bugs the shit out of me, Ann Taylor, the smile, the kind of the smug kind of look, and the hand on the arm. Fuck. I don't. I know that defense attorneys, they have a job to do. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, they have to do their job. But this here, to me, if Brian Koberger is guilty of this crime, right? If he is absolutely done this crime, and maybe he'd told her originally that he hadn't done it, and she truly believed that he was innocent of this crime, and then it got to the point where he turned around and said, "You know what? I actually did it. I'm not going to trial. I don't want to die. I did it." You would think that this kind of thing would end. This gestures of smiles and putting your hand on them like this, it sends different messages, doesn't it? It sends a different message across. It's almost like, you've got this. That to me, this gesture here depicts, look, trust it, trust the system, trust what we're doing, and I got you kind of thing. Because at this point, if he's guilty of this crime, and he's turned around and said to her in confidence, "I did it. I'm guilty of this crime," then you've got nothing to fucking do here. This is done. I won't be touching him on the arm. Do you know what I mean? I'd be there because I've got to be here. But this, to me, let me know down below what you think. Do you know what I mean? I'm looking at it from a perspective. If Brian Koberger is absolutely guilty of this crime, and he has said to her at some point, "Do you know what, Anne? I'm guilty, mate." What's this about? What is this? Touching him on the arm and the smile and that, I just can't get it. Bearing in mind that she is Idaho. You crack her down the middle, she's got Idaho written down the middle of her. So this should hit her like a fucking freight train. If she comes to that realization that this guy did it, he went into someone's home, into these students' home, and executed them in the manner with which we have kind of been alluded to that he did. Do you know what I mean? This is fucked up to me.
I think it shows a little bit more accountability and taking, owning up to what he did, to have to say the victims' names, our daughter's name, not just yes, yes, yes. I just feel like that was a really easy way to admit his guilt.
Yeah, I agree. We want to see some sternness when you see 4 lives lost. He wasn't even asked to stand. It's like those are the type of things that we want to send a message. If you come after kids, people are going to put their foot down and they're going to do everything in their power to make sure.
That was fucking bizarre, wasn't it? Like, he even stood up, and Hitler basically said, "Look, you don't have to stand up. You don't have to stand up. I appreciate the sign of of respect, but it has been very like kid gloves with Brian, very very kid gloves." As if it's been odd. It has been odd. On the grander scheme of things, everything aside, the way they've handled him, if they all believe that he is guilty of this crime, has all been very. It is fucking weird.
Those kids are, whoever did that is held to the accountability, the highest that there is. But it was quiet.
You've been somewhat critical of the state and how all of this was handled from the very beginning. And as I understand it, you also you wanted to go to trial. You did not want to see this plea deal come to fruition. Why?
We've seen all the rumors, all the things that are out there. A gag order just kind of turned it into just a big, huge mess of conspiracy. So,
he's absolutely right, Ed. Do you know what I mean? The gag order, was supposed to, or a gag order, the non-dissemination order, the purpose of it is always about, do you know what I mean? It's to stop information from going out to the public, for them to look at and prejudge what is out there. But you would think that people would fucking learn that in the absence of information, people will make information up. And the downside is there is a lot of fucking idiots out there who take information and they take that as gospel. They think because it's written down on the screen or someone's speaking it to them, that then is the truth. It's fact. So that then just fills that blank anyway. So in terms of saying that you've got a non-dissemination order set in place to protect the accused rights to a fair trial, in effect, in this case, and this isn't the only case, but this has done the most damage possible. The most damage possible. It became the crux of the issues around this case, that the void that was filled. And even channels like mine, do you know what I mean? We all fell into the same trap of talking about it. I'd like to think that there's some channels, again, like mine. I touched on things that were being raised, yes, but I'd like to think that I didn't necessarily go down the route of, I don't know, pushing lies. We would talk about things, but we wouldn't push anything as fact and say, look, what I'm talking to you now is factual, when in fact it's not factual. And if anybody thinks that I've pushed something out and said that this is fact, when in fact it's not, and I've tried to leverage, then I'd like to see somebody challenge me and say, no, you said this is fact and it weren't fact. We have questioned things, and I think that the things that we've questioned deserve to be such. But let's carry on. It's only a short one.
We don't want to live that for the next 10, 15 years. So if our community came together and they were the ones that said he was guilty, then it's not us saying it or one person saying it. It's everyone saying that. So there's power in that. I believe in the court system. I believe in our juries. And
I do believe that this should have gone to trial. This should gone to trial. This will turn into a perpetual mystery of what happened here. And it's not just because of, the likes of myself and others who talk about this. It's because there are issues around this crime. There's issues around the way it was handled. There's issues around, how, even like I say, even with in that plea hearing, to hear the prosecutor turn around and say, well, we don't have any evidence that ties him to the property or the victims. And then you're thinking, what the actual fuck? You've got the car, which isn't definitive. I don't care what anybody says. And you've got the golden goose, which is this knife sheath, which on the grander scheme of things, you think, how lucky was you to have this knife sheath presented to you with DNA on it, of all things? But then you've got this convoluted story of how they got the DNA. And then lo and behold, you've now had this other cop come out who interviewed Brian Kohberger, who just happens to have had a resume that was a handwritten resume from Brian Kohberger that was sent into him. And you think, do you know what I mean? The skeptic in you is going to say, well, law enforcement then had a DNA source because he would have had DNA on that resume. But again, that's just the skeptic in me. Do you know what I mean?
that's what we were prepared to do.
Christy, do you worry there are questions you will never get answered as a result of this deal? Because he doesn't have to say exactly what his motive was. He doesn't have to say where the murder weapon is.
I think it's worse than that. I think we're going to find out secrets through his sick, twisted mind.
Why?
He's going to write about it. He's going to have interviews, exclusive interviews.
This is what I don't get, right? This is what I don't actually get. And the thing is here is, on one hand, the Gonsalves family say they want to hear him say the names. They want to hear him admit or say that he did it to dispel the rumors, to stop the rumor mills. That's what they turn around and say. They turn around and say that's what they want, for him to be able to say, yes, I did it, and admit to it, so that people like me who may have a doubt, a shred of doubt, can be like, he fucking did it then. He did it. There's no reason to contemplate anything else anymore because he's admitted to it. But then on the flip side of it, he turns around and Steve Gonsalves says, well, it's going to be worse than that. You're going to find out through a book or whatever. So what do you want? Do you want the guy to tell you, or do you not want the guy to tell you? Because in my mind, it would be, I don't give a fuck how he tells me. If there's a doubt in my mind that, did he do it on his own? Was there other people with him? But then he writes a book and tells everything and says why he did it, how he did it. Then that to me would be my answer. I've got the answer then. Do you know what I mean? That's it. It's almost like their issue is that they don't want him to make money from it. And look, yeah, I get that. I get the fact that it could be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow, but they have civil avenues that they can go to try and stop him making money. They could try and do that and challenge that. But ultimately, it'd be like, do I care if those are the questions that are eating me up inside? Do I care that he makes money as long as he fucking puts them to bed? Because it's that what I don't give a fuck what money he has. I don't care what commissary he has, because he's had his fucking freedom took away. He's locked in a cage for the rest of his life. He's not going to get out. His freedom is gone. And I think that however much money anybody had in the world, they would trade it for freedom if they had none. So look, it's that balancing act, isn't it? What do you want? Do you want to know everything or don't you? Would you rather he said, all right, then fuck it, I won't write a book. I'll write nothing and I will keep silent forever. And all them things in your head that keeps you up at night because you don't know, keep them. You know, if Steve was given that as a question put to him, what would be his answer then? I don't know. You've got two options. He stays silent, doesn't say anything, and this perpetual thing that you fear is going to happen for 10, 15, 20 years, forever. Or do you want him to tell you? The caveat is, if he tells you, he'll get paid for it. I'd like to put that question to him.
His family members are certain people, and that's how we're going to hear about it.
And to be fair, that could happen because in this particular plea deal, there's nothing that forbids that.
Exactly.
What have you been told that we don't know surrounding what happened that night?
Nothing.
We asked them, can you just tell us the last...
Just let that ring in for a second. They've been told nothing. Their claim is they've been told nothing. So all of the times that they have come forward with information, and look, this isn't a hate thing. I'm just trying to get my head round it. I'm trying to get my head round when you've been so vocal and saying that this person did it, you know he did it, you want him to die, you don't want him to be breathing anymore, and you're coming out about kill kits and all this sort of information. He was so close, he was touching the Wi-Fi. If you weren't told that by the actual people inside, so law enforcement or the judge, the prosecution, sorry, not the judge, Freudian slip, then who's telling you? Where are you getting the information that you are then taken as gospel? And is it that you're getting told by media? Is it where are the leaks coming from and where they go? Who is the conduit between information? It just proves that this situation was being leaked all the way through it. Right from the very beginning, there was leaks going somewhere and someone was going to Steve Gonsalves and feeding him information. Like fucking Chinese whispers. That's what crucified this case. The fact that there was just nobody doing what they should have been doing around it. That's my case. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Let's go back. It's nearly ended.
Of our daughter, so when we have our victims' statements, we can be as accurate as possible. We don't want any lies in those statements. We want pure, and they wouldn't even give us the facts of what happened.
Just some details too. Yeah. That would be hard to know, but we want to know it. We want to know.
I don't want to hear it from the media. I'd rather hear it from, the investigators.
And look, I'm going to stop that there and not go any further, purely because, look, I'm conscious that what they start to talk about here is about the injuries sustained by Kaylee, and they go into quite graphic detail. We know, those of us who have been around the case long enough, we know, and they just reiterate that. But what's very important to hear again is again what Christy just said. They don't want to hear through media. So again, to me, they have shown that all of the information that they have has been leaked to them via media, and that's the feeling that I get. So every time they have come out, all they've done is reiterated what has come through the media. They've never known anything beyond that. So every single thing that the Gonsalves family have said has been second-hand information from the media, potentially from an internal source working for the prosecution who is leaking stuff to the media that is subsequently leaking stuff to them. Because they have literally flat out said there they don't want to hear things from the media. They want to hear things from inside the system itself. and that's not forthcoming. And it would appear that they don't even have the autopsy report. They literally don't know what happened to their child. The only information they have is what was told to them by Kathy Mabbott, which is fucking bizarre to me. It's weird, like everything else in this case. It's just a bundle of bizarreness. Now, apparently, Shannon Gray will go on to say that it's been promised that eventually that they will get all of Discovery. Obviously, Hitler has got to go, or someone called him Judge Hip Replacement. I like that. Judge Drymouth. He's obviously got to go through it all and see what he's got to redact. I did see that Jules said that they're going to set up this secondary site that's going to have everything on it. I find that uncomfortable as well, because someone reached out to me yesterday and clearly shown that when you look for Brian Kohberger within the court system, within the prison system, he doesn't seem to be on there. There's nothing, there doesn't seem to be, and this is what feeds into the narratives where people say, oh, this is a psyop and things. All of the channels that you go to that you would normally see things registered, like when you see prisoners go through the system and you see the charges and you see this, that and the other, it don't seem to be on there for Brian Kohberger. When people, they die, they're dead, you sometimes will see bodies being removed from the property. There's been none of that. You've also seen that every one of the victims was seemingly secretly, cremated behind closed doors. There doesn't seem to be any public records from what I can see of their deaths. So there is a lot of fucking oddness around this. And even to the point now where they're going to set up a complete different page, what they're going to feed the documents into. And I get this feeling like, why are you doing that? Why can't they just go through the standard system? It's almost like you're trying to keep people away from that and make them focus over here at something else, so you don't see what's going on. It feels very, I said yesterday, and I think I said down here, this is a controlled release. And when you start to control things, that means you're hiding things. And when you're hiding things, that is not right and it's not proper. Let me know down below what you think, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Mwah.